The twin sons of Kor burned down on the marketplace like angry eyes. The air smelled of smoke, metal, and fear. Rows of cages stood under the heat, each holding a living soul, slaves from across the galaxy. Some were silent with empty eyes. Some begged for mercy in strange tongues. Some just waited for death. But in the last row, half hidden in the shadows, sat a girl who was nothing like the others. She was small, young, and thin, but there was something about her that made even the cruel traders keep their distance. Her skin shone faint silver under the sunlight, like the surface of a quiet lake. Her hair fell across her face, tangled and dirty, yet she had the kind of beauty that made people stop and stare. Her eyes, when they looked up, were bright, too bright. Eyes that had seen too much pain and still refused to break. Heavy chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, locked to the bars behind her. They called her the Wild One. She bit her last owner, one trader whispered to another. Slashed his face open. He sold her for half price after that. Half price? You couldn't pay me to take her, the other said with a laugh. But there was no laughter in her cage. She sat very still, head bent, as if she didn't hear the insults. Maybe she didn't care. Or maybe she had heard them too many times to feel anything now. All around her, the market was alive with noise. Alien masters argued over prices. Traders shouted to catch buyers' attention. Chains clanked. Credits exchanged hands. Somewhere, someone screamed when a slave tried to run and was caught again. But the girl stayed quiet, until a stranger arrived. He wasn't like the others. He didn't have the thick armor of a warlord or the bright robes of the rich. He was human, tall in simple travel clothes, a bag slung over his shoulder, boots covered in dust from long roads. He walked slowly, calmly, but his eyes missed nothing. A human in this part of the galaxy was rare. Rare enough to make the traders stop what they were doing and stare. The stranger looked at every cage as he passed, his face unreadable. The slaves inside stared back with hungry eyes, hoping he might choose them. But he didn't stop. Not until he reached the girl in chains. For the first time in hours, she lifted her head. Their eyes met, his dark and steady, hers silver and burning. The trader nearest to them hurried forward, flashing sharp teeth in a smile. Ah, human. Lucky day for you. This one is cheap. Pretty, strong, a little wild. He chuckled. You won't find better for the price. The stranger didn't answer. He was still watching the girl. She didn't beg. She didn't plead for freedom like others did. She just stared back at him with the cold calm of someone who had lost everything and expected nothing more. Finally, the man spoke, his voice even and low. How much? The trader blinked, surprised. For her? Few credits. No one keeps her for long. Too much trouble. But maybe you like trouble, eh? Around them, the market quieted. A human buying the cursed girl? It was something new to laugh about. The stranger reached into his bag and tossed a credit chip at the trader. I'll take her. The trader grinned wide. She's yours. No returns if she bites your head off in your sleep. He unlocked the cage with a hiss. The girl didn't move. Her chains clattered as the door swung open, but she stayed seated, eyes on the human. He turned to leave. Come, he said simply. She rose slowly, chains dragging across the ground. The crowd murmured as she followed him through the market, silent as a shadow. Some laughed, some shook their heads. He won't last a day. She's cursed. Poor fool doesn't know what he's doing. The human didn't react. He led her out of the marketplace, toward the small ship waiting on the landing pad. The metal ramp lowered with a soft hum. She paused at the bottom, eyes narrowing. Every other master had led her from one cage to another. Would this be the same? He looked back at her, his face calm. Inside, he said. You're safe here. Safe. It was a word she hadn't heard in years. She stepped onto the ship. The door closed behind them with a hiss. As the engines rumbled to life, the marketplace shrank below them. The red suns fell behind the clouds. The voices, the laughter, the insults, all gone. But chains still hung from her wrists. She looked at the human. He kept his eyes on the stars ahead. For the first time in a long time, she wondered if her life was about to change, or if this was just another cage waiting to close. The ship lifted off slowly, leaving the red suns and the noisy market far behind. The engines hummed softly, carrying them into the dark sky. Inside the small cabin, the girl sat on the floor, her back against the wall, chains still around her wrists and ankles. She did not speak. She did not ask questions. She simply stared at the human who had just bought her. He sat in the pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His face was calm, almost too calm, like a man who had already thought through every choice he was making. Finally, the silence broke. "Why?" the girl asked softly. Her voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in years. The man didn't turn. "Why what? Why buy me?" she asked. Her eyes were sharp now, silver light glowing faintly in them. "You saw the others laugh. They know I'm cursed. They know no one keeps me. So why?" The man leaned back in his seat, still not looking at her. For a long moment it seemed he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, "Because they looked at you like you were nothing, like an animal to be chained. I don't like people who think they own everything." She blinked, confused. "So you buy slaves to free them?" He didn't reply. The ship left the planet's atmosphere, entering open space. Stars spread out like a million lights, and the endless black stretched in every direction. The girl hugged her knees to her chest. She didn't trust him yet. She had seen too many masters wear false kindness before showing their real faces. But this man was different. He hadn't even asked her name. The silence returned, heavier this time. Finally, he rose from the pilot's seat and walked toward her. She tensed, ready to fight if she had to. But he didn't hit her. He didn't shout orders. He knelt beside her and slowly, carefully, unlocked the chains on her wrists. The heavy metal fell to the floor with a dull clank. She stared at him, eyes wide. "Why?" she whispered again. He met her gaze for the first time. His eyes were dark, steady, and strangely gentle. "Because no one should live in chains." The words hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever said that to her. Not since the day she was taken. Her hands were free now, but she didn't run. Where would she go? Space was endless, and she had no home to return to. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. No one had asked her name in years. To the traders, she was just the wild one. "Lyra," she said finally, voice almost too soft to hear. He nodded. "I'm Kale." She repeated the name in her head. Kale. Felt strange saying someone's name after so long. Kale stood and went to a small metal box near the wall. He opened it and pulled out a container of water and a packet of food. He handed them to her. Lyra looked at them suspiciously before taking them slowly. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her hands shook as she opened the packet. Kale returned to the pilot's seat while she ate in silence. Outside, the stars kept passing. After a while, Kale spoke again. "You were a princess once, weren't you?" The words froze her in place. She turned sharply. "How do you know that?" Kale didn't look at her. "Rumors travel. A royal family betrayed. A girl sold as punishment. A warning to others who resist." He paused. "That girl was you, wasn't it?" Lyra's throat tightened. She looked away. "I was never a princess," she said bitterly. "Just a mistake they wanted to erase." Kale's eyes flicked toward her briefly. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. Suddenly, a warning light blinked on the control panel. A sharp beeping sound filled the cabin. Kale frowned and pressed a few buttons. Lyra watched him, confused. "What is it?" He didn't answer at first. His jaw tightened. Then he said, "Trouble." On the radar screen, 3 red dots appeared. "Ships. Bounty hunters," Kale muttered. "Your former masters must have put a price on you already." Lyra's blood ran cold. The chains were gone. She had food in her hands. She was free for less than an hour, and now they were coming to take her back. Kale started flipping switches, preparing the ship for faster flight. His calm expression didn't change, but his movements were sharp and precise. Lyra's heart pounded. You should leave me, she said suddenly. They want me, not you. If you let me go, they won't chase you. Cale didn't even look at her. Not happening. Lyra stared at him. Why? You don't even know me. He met her eyes finally, voice steady. Because nobody deserves to be chained, he said again. Outside, the bounty hunter's ships closed in fast. Inside, Cale's hand hovered over the controls. He had made his decision. He wasn't giving her back. Not now. Not ever. The warning siren kept flashing red. Cale's ship shook slightly as the first laser shots missed by inches. 3 bounty hunter ships were now close enough that Lyra could see their sharp black wings glinting under the starlight. Inside the cabin, Cale's hands moved fast over the controls. His face was still calm, but his jaw was tight now. Lyra gripped the edge of her seat. She had seen bounty hunters before. They didn't take prisoners back alive unless there was extra money for suffering. You should let me go, she said again, voice shaking. They only want me. If I'm not here, they won't chase you. Cale didn't even turn. His eyes stayed on the radar. I told you before. I'm not giving you back. Lyra stared at him. She didn't understand this human. No one had ever risked their life for her. Not her family. Not the traitors. Not anyone. Another blast hit the ship's shields. The whole cabin shook. Cale cursed under his breath. Hold on. He slammed a lever forward. The ship roared and shot toward a nearby asteroid field. The hunters followed, their ships faster and heavier. The first asteroids appeared ahead, giant rocks spinning slowly in the dark. Some were the size of houses. Others were bigger than whole cities. Cale flew straight into the field. Lyra grabbed the seat tighter. Are you crazy? They can't fire as easily here, Cale said, weaving between the spinning rocks. The hunters kept coming. One ship fired too soon and its shot hit an asteroid instead. The explosion lit up the darkness, sending chunks of rock flying. Cale's ship twisted left, then right, moving so close to the asteroids that Lyra felt like they would crash at any second. She finally found her voice. Why are you doing this? She shouted over the alarms. You don't even know me. Cale's eyes stayed on the path ahead. I know enough, he said. Another blast hit the back of the ship. A warning light turned orange. Lyra swallowed hard. If they got caught, she knew what would happen. Chains again. Dark cells. Punishments. She had escaped once, but no one escaped twice. Her hands shook as she looked at Cale. We won't make it. Cale's voice was steady. We will. One of the hunter ships made a mistake, flying too close to a spinning asteroid. Clipped its wing and spun out of control before crashing into another rock. A bright explosion filled the darkness. Lyra blinked. 1 down, 2 left, but the other 2 were smarter. They stayed behind Cale's ship, firing carefully when they got the chance. The cabin shook again as another blast scraped the shields. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Cale flipped a switch. Shields at 30%, a mechanical voice said coldly. Lyra's chest tightened. She thought of the chains on the floor, the ones Cale had removed earlier. She thought of the market, the traders, the insults, the laughter. If they caught her again, it would be worse this time. Cale suddenly turned the ship sharply left. The hunters followed. Another asteroid exploded behind them as a shot missed. Almost there, Cale muttered. Almost where? Lyra asked. Cale didn't answer. He pushed another lever. The ship shot forward, dodging the last few asteroids before breaking free into open space again. A giant planet loomed ahead, blue and green with swirling white clouds. Lyra blinked. Where are we going? Cale finally looked at her. Somewhere they won't follow. The hunters were still behind them. Cale flipped a red switch. A countdown began on the screen. Jump drive charging, the ship's voice said. Lyra's eyes widened. You have a jump drive? Of course, Cale said simply. The hunters fired again, but Cale kept flying straight, waiting for the countdown. 10, 9, 8. The ship's voice counted down. One hunter ship flew closer, almost beside them now. 7, 6, 5. Another blast hit the shields. Sparks flew again. 4, 3. Kale gripped the controls. Lyra held her breath. 2, 1. The stars outside blurred, then stretched, then vanished as the ship jumped into hyperspace. Silence filled the cabin. The hunters were gone. Lyra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Kale leaned back in his seat. We're safe. For now. Lyra stared at him. You risked your life for me. Kale shrugged. I told you. No one deserves to be chained. She looked at the chains still lying on the floor. Her wrists were free, but inside she still felt the weight of them. For the first time since her capture, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could trust someone again. But deep down, she knew the bounty hunters wouldn't give up so easily. This wasn't over. Not yet. The stars outside the ship had stopped stretching. The jump was over. Kale checked the radar twice before leaning back in the pilot's seat. Empty space. No hunters. No ships. Just the cold, quiet dark. Lyra sat across the cabin, still holding her knees close to her chest. She was free of chains, but her body stayed tense like she expected the door to burst open any second. It was silent for a long time. Finally, Kale said, We'll stay off their scanners for a while. They won't find us easy. Lyra didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the floor. Kale stood and walked to the storage unit. He pulled out a small blanket and handed it to her. You look like you haven't slept in days, he said. She stared at the blanket, then at him. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Why are you doing this? He frowned slightly. Doing what? Treating me like a person, she said slowly. You paid for me. I'm supposed to obey. Isn't that how it works? Kale shook his head. Not for me. You're not property. Not here. The words felt strange in her ears. Not property. She had been called thing, beast, even pet before. Never anything else. She wrapped the blanket around herself but kept watching him carefully, like she still couldn't trust what she was hearing. Kale sat down across from her. Tell me, he said after a moment. Who are you really? Lyra's fingers tightened on the blanket. Why do you care? Because, Kale said quietly, people don't put that big a bounty on someone for no reason. The hunters will keep coming. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Lyra looked away. Her throat felt tight. She had spent years hiding her story, her name, her past, because anyone who learned it either tried to use it or sold her for it. But something in Kale's eyes made her speak. My name is Lyra Valen, she said finally. Her voice trembled a little. Daughter of House Valen, last ruler of the 10 Stars Kingdom. Kale stayed quiet, waiting. Lyra let out a slow breath. My family ruled for centuries. Then the Empire came. They offered peace, as long as we swore loyalty. My father refused. They called it rebellion. Kale nodded slightly. He had heard stories about the fall of the 10 Stars Kingdom. No one ever said what happened to the royal family. Lyra's hands shook now. The Empire took the planets one by one. My father was killed. My mother, I never saw her again. They kept me alive only as a warning. Kale understood. So they sold you to traders. Lyra nodded, her jaw tight. They wanted everyone to see the princess chained like an animal, to show what happens when you resist. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the ship's engine. Kale leaned back, arms crossed. Now it makes sense. Why the bounty is so high. Lyra looked at him sharply. Are you going to sell me too? The question cut the air like a blade. Kale met her eyes. No. Her voice cracked. Why not? Everyone else did. Kale's voice stayed calm. Because I don't care about the bounty. Or the Empire. They think they own everything. I don't like people like that. Lyra studied his face, searching for any sign of a lie. She found none. He stood and began checking the ship systems again. Lyra finally spoke, her voice trembling, softer this time. Do you know what it's like? To wake up every day waiting for someone to unlock your chains? To be given food like you're an animal? To have people stare at you like you're less than dirt? Kale paused but didn't turn around. Lyra's eyes burned with anger and pain. I thought death would be better. At least it would stop. Cale turned then. His face was unreadable, but his voice was steady. You're not dead. You're here. And as long as you're here, you're free. The words hit her harder than she expected. She turned her face away, blinking fast. Cale didn't press her. He just said, "Get some rest. We'll reach a safe place soon." She stared at him. Safe place? Cale nodded. A planet outside the Empire's control. People there don't ask questions. We can hide for a while. Lyra hesitated. The word safe felt strange on her tongue. She didn't know if such a place even existed anymore. But Cale said it like he believed it. For the first time in years, she wondered if maybe she could believe it too. The planet called Duskfall appeared in the distance like a giant shadow. It was a place of storms, its thick clouds glowing faint orange from the dying sun behind it. From space, it looked like a world hiding secrets under endless darkness. Cale's ship moved toward it slowly, engines low to avoid being tracked. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat now, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. She hadn't spoken much since telling him about her past. People here don't like the Empire, Cale said, eyes on the controls. They won't hand us over. Lyra nodded but didn't answer. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe anywhere could be safe. But part of her heart whispered, they will come. They always come. The ship passed through the planet's thick clouds, lightning flashing in the distance like angry claws. They landed on a small platform at the edge of a canyon city. The buildings looked old, made of black stone and metal, lights glowing faintly through the storm's haze. Cale powered down the ship and stood. We'll get supplies, maybe fuel. Then we leave before anyone notices. Lyra followed him out into the storm. The wind was cold and wet, carrying the smell of metal and smoke. She kept the blanket tight around her shoulders, eyes scanning the shadows like a hunted animal. The city was busy even in the storm. Traders shouted over the wind. Children ran between market stalls. Rough-looking men and women watched newcomers with suspicion. Cale walked calmly, like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He bought fuel cells from a mechanic, food from a street vendor, and parts for the ship from an old man with one eye. Lyra stayed close, silent, her silver eyes darting at every sound. For a moment it almost felt normal. Almost. Then Cale stopped. He felt it before he saw it. The way the crowd's noise changed. The way some people looked over their shoulders. The way others slipped quietly into doorways. Lyra felt it too. Her body tensed. Cale turned slowly. At the far end of the street, 3 men in black armor stepped through the storm. Blasters on their belts. Empire marks on their shoulders. Hunters. Lyra's breath caught. They found us, she whispered. Cale's eyes narrowed. He grabbed her hand. Run. They ran through the narrow streets as the hunters shouted behind them. The storm swallowed the noise, but the sound of boots on metal grew closer. Cale pulled Lyra into an alley, then another, weaving through the maze-like city. The hunters followed, their armor glinting when lightning split the sky. Lyra's heart pounded. She hated running. She had run before. It never ended well. This way, Cale said, turning sharply toward a bridge that crossed the canyon below. Wind howled through the gap, cold and sharp. They were halfway across when blaster shots hit the bridge rail. Sparks exploded. Lyra stumbled, gripping the railing. The canyon below was a dark mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Cale fired back with his small pistol, forcing the hunters to duck behind cover. Keep moving, he shouted. They reached the other side, running through another street as rain began to fall. Lyra's legs burned, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't go back. She wouldn't. More hunters appeared from the shadows ahead. The Empire had set a trap. Cale cursed under his breath and pulled Lyra into an abandoned building. Dust and broken furniture filled the room. Lightning lit up shattered windows. They'll surround us, Lyra said, her voice trembling. Cale checked his weapon calmly. Then we break through before they do. She stared at him. You're not afraid? He gave her a quick look. Fear doesn't help. Plans do. Outside, boots crunched on wet ground. Voices barked orders. Kale moved to the back door. When I say run, head for the ship. Don't stop. Lyra shook her head. They'll kill you. Kale's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. They can try. The door crashed open at the front. Hunters stormed in. Kale fired first, hitting the lights. Darkness swallowed the room. Blaster shots lit the air in brief flashes. Kale moved fast, using the dark to his advantage. 2 hunters went down before the others knew where he was. Run! He shouted. Lyra ran through the back door as Kale followed, firing behind them. The storm outside screamed like a living thing. They raced through the streets toward the landing platform. Hunters kept coming. Too many. Kale and Lyra reached the ship as blaster shots hit the ground near their feet. Inside, Kale pushed her up the ramp before turning to fire one last time. The engines roared to life. As the ship lifted off, lightning split the sky, lighting the hunters' angry faces below. Lyra collapsed into the co-pilot seat, shaking. Kale sat beside her, breathing hard but calm. They won't stop, she said softly. No, Kale agreed. But neither will we. The ship vanished into the storm-filled sky, leaving the hunters behind, for now. The storm on Duskfall was far behind now. The hunters were gone, at least for the moment. But both Kale and Lyra knew it was not over. The Empire never gave up once it set its eyes on someone. Inside the small ship, silence filled the air again. The engines hummed softly as the stars slid past outside the window. Lyra sat at the co-pilot seat, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders again. Her silver eyes watched the stars, but her mind was far away. She had lived in fear for so long that even freedom felt strange, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. Kale was at the controls, calm as always. He didn't talk much unless he had something to say. That was one thing Lyra noticed about him. He wasn't like the traders who yelled or the hunters who barked orders. He spoke only when needed, and his words always carried weight. Finally, Kale said, "We need a place to hide, somewhere they won't expect." Lyra turned to him. "There's no such place. The Empire reaches everywhere." Kale shook his head. "Not everywhere." She frowned. "Where then?" He didn't answer immediately. He adjusted the course first, then leaned back in his seat. "There's a planet," he said slowly, "far from the main routes, forgotten by most. Some people call it Haven." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a story." Kale's mouth curved in the smallest hint of a smile. "Most good places do." Lyra looked back at the stars. She wanted to believe him, but it was hard. Every time she thought she was safe, the hunters came. Every time she tried to rest, chains returned. She whispered, "What if they find us there too?" Kale glanced at her. "Then we keep running. Or we fight back." She stared at him, surprised. "Fight the Empire? You're only one man." He didn't flinch. "One man can still make a difference." Lyra didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken like that around her. Everyone else just obeyed the Empire or feared it. She studied Kale's face carefully. He looked calm, steady, and yet there was something in his eyes, like someone carrying a weight he didn't talk about. Finally, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Kale kept his eyes on the stars. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything." The words made her chest tighten. She wanted to ask what he meant, but his expression told her he wouldn't say more. The silence returned, heavier now. Then Lyra said softly, "I can help you." Kale looked at her. Lyra sat straighter, wrapping the blanket tighter. "If we reach Haven, if I survive, I still have allies. Old ones. People who served my family before the Empire came. Some are hiding. Some are waiting." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Waiting for what?" Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the cabin's light. "For someone to fight back." Kale leaned back in his seat. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said, "You think they'll fight for you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "They'll fight for freedom, for revenge. The Empire destroyed everything we had. There are thousands like me broken, scattered, but not gone." Kale considered this. His face stayed calm, but his mind was working fast. A hidden network. People with nothing left to lose. Could work, or it could get them both killed. Finally, he said, "First, we survive. Then we see who still answers your call." Lyra's eyes stayed on him. "And you? Will you fight with us?" Cale didn't look at her. "I don't fight for thrones," he said quietly, "but I fight against chains." Those words made something shift inside her. For the first time since her capture, she felt hope. Real hope. The ship's navigation beeped softly. Cale checked the screen. "We're close to haven. One more jump." Lyra leaned back in her seat. Her hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear this time. For years, she had been running, hiding, surviving. Now, for the first time, she was thinking about something bigger: freedom, rebellion, allies, maybe even war. Cale set the coordinates for the final jump. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment. She could almost see it. A galaxy where no one lived in cages, where children weren't sold, where the Empire didn't decide who lived or died. Felt impossible. But then again, so did being free. And yet here she was. When she opened her eyes, Cale was watching her. "Get some rest," he said. "The next part won't be easy." Lyra nodded slowly. "I'm ready." Outside, the stars blurred as the ship made the final jump toward haven, and whatever waited for them there. The ship came out of the jump with a soft hum. Ahead of them, the planet called Haven floated like a green jewel in the middle of space. No Empire patrols. No hunters. Just quiet skies and thick forests covering the land below. Cale guided the ship down through white clouds until they reached a hidden valley surrounded by mountains. Old structures lay half-buried under the trees, outposts from wars long forgotten. As they landed on a flat clearing, Lyra looked around carefully. "This is Haven?" Cale nodded. "No Empire here. Too far. Too wild. Perfect place to disappear." But before they could relax, movement stirred among the trees. Figures appeared, men and women in rough armor, carrying old blasters. They surrounded the ship quickly but didn't attack. One stepped forward, an older man with a scar across his face. His eyes widened when he saw Lyra. "Princess?" he whispered. Lyra froze. It had been years since anyone called her that. The man knelt on one knee. "I thought you were dead." Lyra's voice shook. "They tried. But I'm here." Others came closer, whispers spreading like fire. "The last ruler of the 10 Stars Kingdom. Alive." Cale watched them carefully, one hand near his pistol. He didn't trust anyone too quickly. The older man looked at Lyra with tears in his eyes. "Many of us are still loyal. Scattered. Hiding, waiting for a sign." Lyra took a deep breath. Her voice was steady now. "Then here is your sign. I want to fight back." The man nodded slowly. "We'll stand with you. But the Empire will come when they hear you're alive." Cale finally spoke. "They're already coming." Everyone turned to him. He explained about the hunters, the bounty, the Empire's ships that would follow sooner or later. "If we stay here, they'll burn this place to the ground," Cale said calmly. The older man straightened. "Then we don't wait for them to find us. We prepare." That night, fires lit up the valley. Fighters who had been hiding for years came out of the shadows. Old ships were dragged from caves. Weapons were repaired. Cale checked every blaster, every shield generator, every engine. He moved like a man who had done this before. Lyra watched him. "You fought wars," she said softly. Cale didn't look at her. Too many. She wanted to ask more, but there was no time. By dawn, the first Empire ships appeared in the sky, 3 dark destroyers cutting through the clouds like knives. The valley fighters scrambled into position. Old anti-air cannons powered up with a loud hum. Cale stood beside Lyra near the command post. "When this starts," he said, "you stay under cover." Lyra shook her head. "No, they need to see me. They need to know the princess is alive." Cale's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. The first shots fell from the Empire ships, burning the trees, shaking the ground. Fighters scattered as explosions lit the valley. Cale jumped into the nearest gun turret and fired back. One Empire fighter went down in flames. The rebels cheered, but more ships came. Lyra stood on a platform, wind whipping her hair, her voice ringing through the valley. Fight for your homes. Fight for your freedom. The empire falls today. Her words lit something inside the fighters. Men and women who had been running for years now stood their ground. Blasters fired. Engines roared. Smoke filled the sky. Kale moved through the battlefield like he had done it 1,000 times. Shooting, shouting orders, dragging the wounded to safety. One Empire destroyer exploded in the air, breaking apart as flames swallowed it. But the other two kept coming. Then, from the forests, more rebel ships appeared, small, fast, rising from hidden caves where they had slept for years. They swarmed the destroyers like angry hornets. Lyra watched as the sky burned with fire and smoke. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, the Empire finally bleeding instead of conquering. At last, the final destroyer fell, crashing into the mountains in a storm of flames. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage. The rebels stood among the ruins, breathing hard, eyes wide. They had won. For now. Lyra looked at Kale. He was leaning against a broken wall, his face streaked with smoke but calm as ever. "You stayed," she said softly. "You could have left any time, but you stayed." Kale met her eyes. "Told you before. I don't like chains." She smiled faintly through her exhaustion. "Then stay longer. Help us rebuild. Help us fight." Kale looked at the wrecked battlefield, the rebels cheering, the smoke rising toward the sky. Finally, he nodded once. "All right." The people of the 10 Stars Kingdom had their princess back. They had their first victory, and they had a man who didn't fight for thrones, but fought for freedom. For the first time in years, Lyra felt the weight of her chains truly gone. The war was only beginning, but so was hope.